Thank you all very much for joining us today. Hello and welcome. I'm Christina Crawway-Meyer. I'm the Director of Student Initiatives at TBR, the College System of Tennessee. On behalf of the Accessibility Chairs, the Training Committee, and our stellar presenters, we welcome you to TBR's Accessibility mini-series, designed to increase your awareness and knowledge of accessibility. Today's session, Math, Equations, and Charts, OPI, is being recorded and will be made available for you to return to as an additional resource in your accessibility work. Thank you for being here with us today. We're excited about your interest and commitment to accessibility. If you're joining us, please mute your lines and please use the chat function, which will be monitored throughout our workshop today, and we will work to incorporate those questions into today's conversation. We'll move to the next slide. Each community college and technical college within the TBR system has a designated accessibility chair that leads and helps coordinate the accessibility work on your campus. These chairs meet regularly as a whole to discuss accessibility progress and barriers to accessibility work as an institution as well as a system. This mini-series was created in response to conversation and accessibility chair meetings where there was a strong desire for collaboration and a space to bring together experienced faculty and staff members to address accessibility barriers and also share out best practices, particularly in those areas of which commonly show the greatest barriers. This is our second accessibility workshop, and we hope that you'll continue to join us for follow-up sessions on the fourth Wednesday of each month for our future presentations. Look for future announcements sharing these mini-series training opportunities or visit the TBR Accessibility Initiative website at https://www.tbr.edu/student-success/accessibility-initiative. You can find a plethora of information here, including additional resources, a list of current accessibility chairs at each TBR institution, and a recording of the mini-series workshops. Guiding TBR's accessibility work and that of our institutions is the intent to make educational resources more accessible to more students. In the context of this work, accessible means that individuals with disabilities are able to independently acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, enjoy the same services within the same time frame as individuals without disabilities with substantially equivalent ease of use. Before we go much further, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Daphne, who will help us as we work to learn more about you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daphne Brown, and I work for TCAP McKenzie over in West Tennessee. I'm the Student Services Coordinator at our campus. I will be serving as your moderator today. Welcome to Math, Equations, and Graphs, Oh My. Our previous meeting was held in Teams and we've moved over to Zoom. So hopefully we are going to complete a poll. Those didn't go great last time, but we listened to your feedback and we're trying to offer something that's going to be a little bit more stable. So we are going to complete a poll and I will be launching that poll, and then we will give you a few minutes to answer the questions, and then I will release the results. So I'll be launching that poll now. This poll will ask you a series of 3 questions. What is your role in education? What format type are your current course documents? And how confident are you with the documents and that they are accessible? So if you will now, please go ahead and start filling out the poll. And once we've given everyone a chance to answer, I will show the results. I'll give everyone just a few more minutes as they're still coming in. Okay, it seems that everybody has had a chance to vote. We got one more coming in. For those of you who just came into the session, Please submit your answers. There are 3 questions in the poll, and if you would just take a few seconds to complete the poll. Okay, we're going to end the poll and see what the results are. Okay, so as we can see in our session today, 70% we have math STEM instructors, 4% we have administrators, 5% we have instructional support, 18% disability services, and 3% of you identified as other. On question 2, what format are your current course documents? We have 55% reporting for Word, 22% reporting for PDF, 13% reporting for Brightspace, 0% for LaTeX, and 10% are identifying as other. For number 3, how confident are you that your documents are accessible? 17% reported not at all comfortable, 62% said somewhat comfortable, and 21% said comfortable. So I shared those results and you can see those now. We expected that there would be a diverse group of roles utilizing a broad range of document types with varied confidence levels. We hope that this training today, regardless of your current preferred platform, your confidence level, or the role that you play on campus will be helpful to you. Whether it provides good resources for you to share on your campus or serves to provide useful training for those teaching in the classroom. To start us off, I'll be turning the session over to Karen Sorensen to introduce our presenters today. Karen?
Thank you, Daphne. Let's see, I've got to stop sharing the poll and start sharing my screen again. So I am so pleased to introduce our presenters today and start with a little story that it started back in the fall of 2015, imagine, when both Dr. Monroe-Ellis and Professor Mosteller were assigned to teach Math 1830, and they decided to collaborate, which is great. But then they also decided, I don't know whose idea it was, but they decided that they wanted to make the class not textbook dependent, so mostly OERs and accessible. So these are just the collaborations and colleagues that we all, that I really treasure, and I know we all do. Dr. Monroe-Ellis has been a faculty member at Pellissippi State for 30 years, and prior to that taught high school mathematics for 4 years. Professor Mosteller has been teaching at Pellissippi State for the last 7 years. Prior to that, she taught high school mathematics for Knox County Schools. Now, our learning outcome today is very simple. It's just by the end of this training, you will know how to create accessible equations and graphs. And we have a very robust handout for you that you will receive after you fill out the survey on this presentation today. Our agenda, we're going to start with an original Word document with math, which looks like it fits the needs of this audience well. A lot of you said you had your documents in Microsoft Word documents, or your math in Microsoft Word. Then we're going to look, we did a comparison of how well screen readers read the math on this Word document and different HTML formats and PDF. So you'll see that comparison. I did want to make sure that everyone on the call understood what a screen reader is. It's software, and people who are blind use screen reading software to use the computer and to read web pages and documents. And there are lots of different types of screen readers. Some students with some students with learning disabilities, like dyslexia, might use a screen reader. but the screen readers we're talking about today, they actually read the formatting of the document and things like that. They're more robust for people who are blind. Then we're going to look at a flow chart that Mary created on how to make your document accessible, your math document accessible, and she's going to walk through an example of that. And you're going to hear JAWS reading the math. That's the screen reader. We'll discuss some known issues. Then Susan is going to show graphing, accessible graphing, and then we'll just have final thoughts and questions. And it looks like there are a lot of people on the session today who feel fairly confident about the accessibility of their own document. So hopefully we'll have time to share ideas. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to share our original source document and turn it over to Susan.
Okay, for the original source document, we just tried to put in things that we thought you might find in a STEM document. So we put list, we put bulleted list, and we also put ordered list. We added a hyperlink. We added text with mathematics in line in it. And we did this two different ways. We did it with, we created the expression, the mathematical expression using the word equation editor. And then we duplicated that same line and created it using the using math type instead. And then we added an image, which would be like a graph, and we have alt text with that image, and then we have a table with headers.
Okay. And now this is the handout that you will get. And this is the document we created to compare. So I'll just say a couple things that when you get this handout, these will link to our recordings of our testing that we did. And we used two screen readers, JAWS 2019 and NVDA 2020. And we were on the Chrome browser when we tested the HTML documents. And we used Office 365. And these were our results. And I'm going to turn it over to Mary to talk a little bit about that and then her flow chart.
So like every faculty member, I am busy. I don't have a spare minute. And when I looked at this chart, it was clear to me that there's only one thing I want to do. All I'm doing is looking for yeses because I don't want to do anything that's going to give me a no. So if you notice in the chart, we got no's, lots of no's on Word and PDF and Word saved as HTML. The only thing that worked consistently was to have the document in HTML format. And notice it's yes all the way across until we get to the table. And JAWS read it beautifully. NVDA, there was a slight problem. It did read the table, but it didn't identify the cell as clearly as we would have liked it to. But after seeing this in writing, it's like everything that I will do will be in HTML from now on, because I'm just not going to waste my time on the other formats.
Mary, we're getting some messages in the chat that say they cannot see the table. I can see it on my screen.
Let's see,
We make it larger.
To zoom in, maybe?
Yeah, Karen, can you increase the size if you don't mind?
Yeah, does that help?
The visual size at the bottom, instead of it being 120%, blow it up to maybe 150.
Sorry.
No, that's good. Now, I do know that we do have a colleague that had a blind student and used Word documents with NVDA. But when we upgraded to the latest version of NVDA and tested, we had issues with it.
Yes. Okay. So, and we did not test with Mac, Mac Apple VoiceOver, I'm afraid to say. So sorry, we will do that in the future session. So you ready to talk about the flow chart, Mary?
Yes. So when we were trying to decide what we were going to do, given that we only have an hour, and
Aaron, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you blow it up full screen so we don't see like the multiple tabs?
It is full screen.
Try F11.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
So since we have an hour, Susan and Karen and I could spend weeks and weeks and weeks, maybe months and months and months working with you on accessibility. But with an hour, we kind of had to limit what we were going to do. And so we decided that since HTML seems to be the best format to put your documents in, for most people, the easiest way to do that would probably be Brightspace. Okay. Another option is to have your own website, which is actually what Susan and I do, but that does involve coding. But if you don't want to code, Brightspace is a really good option. So we use Lucidchart to create this flow chart, and it is accessible. It's really interesting when the screen reader reads this document. It even reads the arrows as connecting, and it tells you what it's connecting from and what it's connecting to. So the 4 issues that you really have to focus on when you're creating a document in Brightspace, and we're going to focus on from an existing Word document because we don't want to recreate the wheel. You've got to bring over your text. That's really easy. It does that very simply. Then you have to worry about your equations because they do not copy easily. Your tables will copy, but you've got to make sure your row and column headers are labeled correctly. And then images, your images will copy over as well, but your alt text won't. So you'll have to worry about that.
This will be in your handouts at the end.
I keep forgetting.
And Mary's going to show you how to do it.
All right,
So
I'm
I'm
going
going
to
to do
stop.
one real quickly. Okay, I've got to share my screen now. I'm not a Zoom person, so it takes me a second to do. I usually work in Teams, so Zoom's a little. Okay, so on the left side of my screen, I have a shortened version of our Word document that we tested. And on the right side, I have Brightspace open. So I am just going to create a new file in Brightspace. And of course, I'm going to give it a name. And I'm going to go back to my Word document, and I'm just going to copy it all. So I'm going to Control-A and Control-C and just bring over everything that is already in my Word document, and Control-V it into HTML editor. Okay. Now, for some reason, and I don't know why, sometimes my image copies twice. I don't know why, but that's simple enough. I'm going to click on one of them and remove it. So it's gone. I do want you to notice that when I copied into the Brightspace editor for my Word document, all my formatting came. So I've got header 1 and header 2s. My ordered list came. So all of those things come from your document. So you don't have to recreate any of that. Now, notice that my equation on number 3, my integral on number 3 did not come. But even before I address that, which I'm going to do, I want you to look at number 1 and number 2. Those are the exact same problem. Number 1 was typed just using the keyboard and the superscript symbol for centimeters cubed. On the second one, it came over in exactly the same format, although it really wasn't written that way. I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to put it back into the document using the Brightspace equation editor. Now notice when I went to the Brightspace equation editor, I have 4 choices there. With graphical equation, which is what I want to use, I'm going to just paste that in so that you can see the difference. And I do need to fix my centimeters cubed. In just a minute, we're gonna play the screen reading of this, and I want you to listen very carefully to those two readings of 14,762.58. Now, my more complicated math, my integral there, I could open the equation editor and type that in, but I'm way too lazy to do that. I've already done that once, clearly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Mathpics, and I already have Mathpics downloaded on my computer, so I'm going to open it up, Control-Alt-M, and then all I have to do is screenshot, just grab that function and it usually comes right up. So of course it doesn't today.
So while you're looking at that, there are people having some viewing options. I'm seeing it great on my
Me too.
screen. If other people want to check the top of your screen, there are some view options. You can zoom and fit it to your window or make it 300% if you need to.
There it is.
Yeah, but I'm not getting the LaTeX, which is weird. I want you to know I did this right before we started this and it worked.
Yeah, it's been a...
Yeah, I think you're grabbing, are you grabbing those dots on top of it and
No, that shouldn't matter.
maybe it's confusing it? Okay, Mathpics always works. There
It
goes.
always works. Okay, so it says it's copied there. It always works. Okay. So
Mathpics is a great find. You're gonna.
it is a
love
great
it.
find that has been working up until this point. How frustrating. Okay, I got it. It just didn't show up on the screen, which is really strange. So I scrolled down to the bottom and the LaTeX was there for me. So all I had to do was open the Brightspace LaTeX browser and put it in. Okay. So I didn't have to retype it. I can just screenshot it and take it in. I do have to say with LaTeX, if you have the free account, you get 50 snips a month free.
Mathpics with the free Mathpics account.
Yes. Okay. So now my only other issue.
Mary, can you do that one more time? I think we had some people that were kind of trying to keep up with you, but they got a little confused
Okay.
when it didn't work the first time. Can you do it one more time?
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to do Control-Alt-M, which opens my Mathpics. And then I am just going to grab my math function there. Now, normally the function appears in this big white space there. Every other time I have ever used Mathpics, it has done that. But it has written it in LaTeX down here, written in blue. Okay, so that is copied already. You don't even have to do anything, it's copied. So then when I go over here to my document, I'll just do another one. I go to the equation editor, choose LaTeX equation, and paste it in. Insert it. There it is. So my last thing is, get my Mathpics to go away. There we go. Okay, on my image. So my image came over when I copied from Word. My alt text does not come over. Okay, so there are two ways you can do this. You can go into the code and put your alt text in, and that works beautifully. I like this way better. It's a little backwards, but I like it better because I think it's easier. I am going to save my image. So
Wait, point out you deleted it in the Brightspace document, and
Yes,
you've
I
gone
did.
back to Word to save it.
You see how I can't live without Susan?
Bossing her around? Yeah.
Which is perfect. So I saved my image to my desktop. And then I am going to copy the alt text that I have in there. So now when I go to put my image in my Brightspace document, I choose the insert image icon, pull it up from my computer, and drag it in there. And when I added, it asked me for the alt text. So I didn't have to go to the code here to figure out where to put it in. So I think this is easier, and I'm going to paste this in. I do want to make a comment about alt text in Brightspace. Susan did some amazing alt text on that image. And
Okay, go ahead and say it. Susan's a little long-winded.
well, that too, but that's okay. It was beautiful alt text. And when I went to put it in the document, in the Brightspace alt text box, it was too long and didn't put it all in there. So we had to edit it because Brightspace alt text is limited on character size. So I'm going to save and close. And there's my document. Couple things I want to say before we listen to it. Notice the difference in how the numbers look. On number 1, it was just typed using the keyboard. And on number 2, it was typed using the equation editor, and it does look different. There is a default setting in Brightspace that puts your LaTeX formulas, functions in the center, in block. There is a way to put them in line, and that is in the handout that you will receive after you do the survey. Good, Karen, I remembered.
That's right.
Okay, so now we're going to listen to this, and I want you to listen very carefully. We're going to listen to number 1 and number 2, and we're going to stop and talk about it, and then we'll come listen to the other part.
Would you like to address some questions now, or should we hold them?
Sure. I think now's
I
fine.
saw a really good one, and it was, well, what happens if the alt text is too long? What options do we have? And we did talk about that. We kind of brainstormed on that. We came up with a few ideas, either adding it into the document so everyone can see it, or putting it in another file and linking to that file. Those were a couple of options that we came up with.
Yeah, there's.
And it's a Brightspace issue. So it's not a universal issue.
But
you can have alt text as long as you want it on some platforms. This is just a Brightspace issue, so it could be fixed.
But alt text is supposed to be limited to about 100 characters. So there are things called long descriptions that you can put in an image, and that will link to another HTML page that has a longer description. But I really like the idea that Susan said about just putting it in the page. Why wouldn't it be beneficial to all your students to have the description? And I think that's the easiest solution. Some other questions. Glenna Winters says she usually recommends putting the longer descriptions below the image too. Andy Creel wants to know, does the alt text character limit also exist if it's inserted into the HTML? That's a good question. I don't know. So like if you put the alt text in the HTML instead of the way Brightspace does it, have to test that out.
We did not test that.
Amy Tankersley was asking about the Superscript for the 14,762. Is that standard? Did you have to type that as a special character, Susan?
Yes.
Yes, when I typed it in Word, I used Superscript, just you can set Word to set a superscript.
Yeah, and then obviously in the math equation editor, you were able to do it. You can copy equations from PowerPoints, right?
Yes, you can copy. Mathpics will screenshot from PDF, from PowerPoint, from your handwriting. You can use it on your phone, and if you hand wrote something, it will convert it.
It's a great find.
It's a great find.
And it works on a Mac too, right?
I assume I don't work on a Mac, so
I think so. I think when you
it
go.
does.
All right, any other questions we didn't?
I can't wait for y'all to hear it.
Okay, so I'll share.
Heading level 1 making math accessible word to Brightspace HTML. Heading level 2 text with simple superscript. Heading level 3 not using any math or equation editor : list of 1 items 1. A container company is designing an open top, square based, rectangular box that will have a volume of 14,762.58 cm3. Find the dimensions of the box that will maximize the surface area. List end. Heading level 3 using the graphical equation editor. List of 1 items 2. A container company is designing an open top, square based, rectangular box that will have a volume of 14762.58 cm3. Math content clickable. Find the dimensions of the box that will maximize the surface area. List end. Heading level 2 text with mathematics.
Did you want to talk about that, Mary?
I do want to talk about that. So if you notice on number 1, which was typed in using just the keyboard, that it read the decimal point, but it read cm3. So it did not read centimeters cubed. Okay. Then when we did it on number 2, in the graphical equation editor in Brightspace, did you notice that the decimal was not read? It read 14762. It paused because the Brightspace graphical equation editor reads that as a period and pauses for the end of the sentence. And then it read 58 cm cubed. It did read the cube correctly. So that is a problem, and it is a known problem in the Brightspace graphical equation editor. We actually tested doing that same number with the LaTeX equation editor in Brightspace, and it read the decimal point correctly. Okay. And the LaTeX also read centimeters cubed. So there's an issue with cm3, cm cubed, centimeters cubed. So, you know, with the screen readers, on a simple problem like this, you might actually just want to type out cubic centimeters. And then the screen reader clearly doesn't have an issue in it. And yes, it does look like there's a space in there. If we look at the code though, there's not one. There's actually an operator in there. And so in the handout we have for you, we have a way that if you want to edit the code and edit out the operator, you can do that and it will read correctly.
Okay, ready to hear the rest?
I think so.
Mathematical expression created with word equation editor, copied to HTML with Mathpics. List of 1 items 3. Let's take a look at another problem to give us more practice and integration. Integral subscript 0 superscript 1 left parent e squared minus 2.4 right parent 5 root of left parent e cubed minus 7.2 t right parent dt. Math content clickable. List end. Heading level 2 images and graphs. Graphic supply and demand curves graphed. Quantity is measured 0 to 60 on the horizontal axis. Prices 0 to 6 on the vertical axis. The equilibrium point is labeled graphic at approximately left parent 35, 2.50 right parent.
Okay.
So you notice JAWS read the integral with no issues, and it also read the alt text that we put in when we added the image in Brightspace.
Okay, ready to move on to graphing?
Yes.
Some people thought that the math type, just in the chat, was typed incorrectly, that there was a space, but there wasn't. We checked that, and that's why it read it as a period. It's not a space.
I think what it's doing is visually putting in a space there because it thinks it's a period, and therefore it puts a space in to begin the next sentence.
Mm-hmm. But we do show you how to edit that out in the handout.
Yes. It's a quick, easy edit. Even we figured it out.
Or use the LaTeX editor instead of the graphical.
Yes.
one.
Just use Mathpics.
Then it's not a problem.
Just use Mathpics and grab it, put it in as LaTeX, you're done. It works.
Tim was asking, have you compared this to publish to math page option for math type? And we did originally test that.
Yeah, we did.
It didn't work well at all.
It was not good.
No. Okay, now Susan is going to talk a little bit about graphing. Let me share my screen.
And we're going to be looking at Desmos. For those of you that are not familiar with Desmos, and I know all math people are, but Desmos is an open resource graphing calculator, and it is fabulous. They are committed to accessibility, and I wrote something down because I wanted to share it with you before we started. On their accessibility page, which is very comprehensive in telling you how to use all different sorts of readers and how to configure them to read the graphs, they've really done their work. But they have a paragraph at the very beginning of the page, and it's titled "Why Accessibility is Important." And the first sentence is their mission statement. And it says, oh God, I'm not going to cry though, is their mission statement. And Desmos's mission is to help every student learn math and love learning math. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that they have put into their platform to make it accessible. For low vision students, they are very mindful of font size and color contrast. For fully blind students, I want to talk about 3 things that they've done to make this platform accessible for students. The first one is functionality of the keyboard. They have a special keyboard. You can see it down in the lower left-hand corner down there of this image, but they have made it so that everything that you would do on this keyboard, you can do on a typing keyboard, so that a blind student has full functionality using just a plain keyboard. The second thing they've done is they've added Mathquill to their site. Now, Mathquill wasn't accessible, and now it is. And Mathquill does things for the student, like if one of the functions is abbreviated, like Desmos has an abbreviation for the standard deviation function, and it's STDDEVX. When it reads that to the student, it says the standard deviation of X, speaks it out. The other thing that Mathquill will do is it will kind of give the student an orientation as to where it is in an expression. It'll tell the student you're in the numerator, you're in the denominator, this is a subscript, this is a superscript. So those are the 2 things that Mathquill does. So it has keyboard functionality, they've added Mathquill, but the one we're going to look at today is the third one, where they worked to make their graphs accessible. And they do something called audio synthesis. And audio synthesis means we're going to listen to this graph, and we're going to hear the changes in the graph. The other thing that they do that we'll come back to at the very end is they provide methods for the student to be, or the teacher, the instructor, to be able to export this graph or any graph into a file that is a tactile file. So Karen has gone up there and it says share your graph, and it says size medium square. That's a drop down. And if you drop down, there are different formats you can use to export to a tactile graph printer. So these are 2 ways that they've created for a blind student to interact with a graph. So I want to just tell you a little bit about what you're going to hear before you hear it on the audio synthesis. We're going to listen to a quartic polynomial. You can see it up in the upper left-hand corner, x to the fourth. I chose that one because it has some twists and turns and drops below the axis. So it has some negative y values and positive y values. Here's what you're going to hear. On the independent variable, that's the x variable, that's the moving left and right on that graph. On that variable, they use stereo sound to a stereo field to reflect the values. So what you're going to hear, especially if you were listening with headphones, you would hear the shift of the graph from left to right. You would hear it move from left to right as you moved along. The other thing that it does with the independent variable is you see that axis right in the middle, that y-axis. The values to the left of that are negative x values, and the values to the right of it are positive x values. And they use timbre to change between those two so that you know you're to the left or the right of the y-axis. Now that's the independent variable, stereo and timbre. The dependent variable is if you've moved left or right, the dependent variable is how high up you are or how low you drop on the graph. It's the position this way for the graph. So you're going to listen for changes in tone. There's going to be changes in pitch. If the graph is decreasing, the pitch will sound one way, and if the graph is increasing, the pitch will sound a different way. Those will reflect the changes. That's one thing you're going to hear. This second part I just love. The second part is when it's negative, when you drop below that x-axis, that horizontal axis, when you drop below that and you're into negative y values, they're going to add static with the tone. You'll still hear the tone because you still need to know whether the graph is increasing or decreasing down there, but you'll hear static with it to let you know that you are now in the quadrants that have negative y values. So static will also show up when the value is undefined, and I think we'll hear that at the very end as it's reading across this screen. When it shoots up out of range, I think we're going to just hear static for that end behavior. So when we go in and listen to this, first thing you'll hear the equation, and then you're going to hear it's going to enter into the graph, and it's going to like give you it's going to speak the y-intercept. It's going to kind of center you in that graph, and it's going to tell you the y-intercept. And Karen will pause it after that. We'll talk for a minute, and then we'll listen to some more of it. Okay? And we pre-recorded this.
Toolbar read only. Expression.
I need to make sure I've got sharing my audio. Sorry.
I heard it.
Oh, you
I heard
did?
it
Okay. Thank you. Let's start it.
Expression bar toolbar read only. Expression list complementary region. Expression 1 colon quote y quote equals quote x quote superscript 4. Baseline plus quote x quote superscript 3. Baseline minus 13 quote x quote superscript 2. Baseline minus quote x quote plus 12 as graph. The audio trace. Press Alt plus T dot edit. Type in text. Alt-E, graph paper showing one graph. Graph paper read only. Audio trace on. Use arrow keys to navigate. To hear the graph, press H. To disable audio trace, press Alt plus T. Expression 1 x colon 0. Y colon 12.
Okay. All right, so it's identified this intercept. Oh, sorry, Desmos. So now, this next thing we're going to do is we're going to trace this graph. And this is where you're going to listen for those 4 components. You're going to listen for the stereo implication that you're moving across the graph. You're going to listen for changes in timbre, You're going to listen for tonal changes to indicate decreasing or increasing, and you're going to listen for static when it has dropped below the axis or when it is undefined at the end. And it does it again. I think Karen, play it one more time. I think you did. Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to listen to will be the points of interest on this graph. The points of interest mathematically would be the intercepts, and it would be the extrema. So what I mean by extrema is everywhere that graph turns and changes direction, it's going to identify those points. So Karen tabs through and listens to those points being identified.
0 and x colon minus 4, y colon 0. Extremum and x colon minus 2.935, y colon minus 48.128. 0 and x colon minus 1, y colon 0. Extremum and x colon minus 0.038, y colon 12.019. 0 and x colon 1, y colon 0. Extremum and x colon 2.224, y colon minus 19.059. 0 and x colon 3, y colon 0.
Okay. And the last thing that we do is we just kind of cruise around the curve a little bit and listen to a few points. So Karen, if you just want to play a couple of those, it's the same thing over and over again. What I do want to point out to you though, is that tone is still there. If you're listening to the tone, it's still showing up so that you get a feel for whether you've dropped down to another point or you're heading up.
Hey, Karen, can you start with the y-axis first?
It's recorded. It's pre-recorded.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just to let those who sent that question. Thank you.
So I've just been, for this recording, Susan set it up, and then I just used arrow keys to explore, and tab key, I think, to go to those, what did you call them, Susan? The
points of interest, the extrema, and the intercepts.
And now I'm just using arrows.
X colon 3.22. Y x 0 x colon 2.66.
Is that good?
Yeah.
You want to hear more? Yeah. So somebody asked if it was free. It is free, right, Desmos?
Yes. Oh yes, it's an open resource graphing calculator, and this graphing calculator is fabulous. It is the tip of the iceberg on what Desmos has done.
And you found it originally, Susan, not even looking for an accessible tool, right? You said.
Right. Yes, I used Desmos. I've been using Desmos for years, just as a presentation tool in class, because look at this graph. This is beautiful. And it's a great way to have students see and interact with graphs while you're teaching.
Okay, I think we are to the questions. And just also final thoughts from you, Susan and Mary. I know we talked about you've been working on this a long time and don't want people to get overwhelmed.
My final thought is, don't do this alone.
No.
If your goal is to make an accessible course, which I think is what our goal is for everyone, is work with somebody and you have half the work and you have all their brilliant ideas.
Well, I had more than, with Mary, you get more than half the work. So,
That's true.
There's that.
This is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
And another thing we have found is that even when you think you have it accessible, fully accessible, you need to listen to it to make sure that it really.
That's right. I learned that from a colleague. I think she's probably on here. I'm just going to give a shout out to her. Eli Nettle told me I needed to listen to everything. So that's what we've been doing. We realized that things we thought were accessible, just like that decimal point that we saw earlier, you would have thought that would have read fine. So we have found, that's my little closing thought, is you're going to need to listen to it.
Okay, I'm going to need some help from my colleagues on the questions because I think they're scattered throughout. So if we don't get to your question, please speak up.
I see one and it asks about slowing it down. You can slow JAWS down.
Yes. You can slow it down with the control window page down, I think is what, or control alt page down, I think.
That is going to be true of just about any screen reader, guys,
yes.
that the student or you're using.
Yes.
We're also getting questions about how to incorporate Desmos with Brightspace.
I didn't hear that one.
We're getting questions of how to incorporate Desmos with Brightspace.
Oh, you know that graph that we just went to, if you create a Desmos account, and there's actually 3 accounts that you can have in Desmos. You can have just a plain Desmos account, which is what this one is done in. And the plain Desmos account, what it'll give you is the ability to create a graph and then save it and share it. So this graph I created in my account, and then I went into Brightspace and just put a link to this graph. What that means is when Karen went to this graph and opened it up, she could have edited anything she wanted in that graph and played around with it. It's live right there. So that's how I would put a graph into Brightspace, is I would save it in my account and then I would link to it, and I would promise myself I'm never going to change it in my account because that's what it's going to link to, is whatever I've saved it as last. Does that answer it? As far as being able to be read by JAWS once you're in there, Karen, I do not know about the links between what you've set up in in JAWS to be able to read the Desmos graph and what's happening in Brightspace.
I just used the link that you put in Brightspace, and then JAWS didn't have any problem reading.
Perfect.
Desmos. You did have a static image that you put into Brightspace as one option, but the screen reader just saw that as an image and it would need alt text. This is much more robust and the student can explore.
Yes.
We're having, do you have a resource you can refer me to for math equation accessibility in Word? That's a loaded question because NVDA, it depends on the screen reader, but NVDA's documentation says, and that's a free screen reader you can download, it says that it should be able to read math in a Word document with math type and math player downloaded, and math type costs money, but they say it works with the free version. We could not get it to work. But
we did get an old version of NVDA to work, didn't we? But not the new current version.
Right.
But JAWS read Word equations just fine, not math type, but just the regular Word equation editor. Mm-hmm. JAWS screen reader was able to read that no problem. And Katrina Debris is saying it doesn't work with the free version. I can verify that. Math type, she says. Any other questions? Have you tested their geometry tool with JAWS? Glenna wants to know.
No, we have not.
There was also an earlier question about the statistical functions, like with the TI-83.
Oh, I've heard the TI-83 speak. You know, they have the TI-83 that.
No, I think the question was, Susan, that Desmos was stats.
Oh, okay. When I had a vision impaired student, Desmos wasn't fully developed yet to speak stats. And so I had to build my own statistical calculators in Teacher Desmos, which is one of the 3 Desmos accounts that I said you can have. It required quite a bit of coding. I'm not really sure how it works now. You can go to the accessibility page on Desmos. It'll tell you exactly how to set up your system. And then you could just play with Desmos and listen to them. The Teacher Desmos site has a beautiful thing in it where you can code narration for a graph. So that's what I did. I built a statistical calculator, I built a bell curve, I shaded it, and then I forced Desmos to speak what I wanted it to say according to the outcomes of the hypothesis test or whatever. So there is a coding for what they call narration.
We had a question from Chris, said, any thoughts about Brightspace winning the LMS contract prior to building documents there? Is this similar in Canvas?
We don't know. I don't know.
I didn't know they had awarded the contract yet.
I don't think they have they?
I didn't think
No.
that. That's what I thought. I don't think they've awarded it yet, so we don't know if it's going to be Canvas, or Blackboard, or D2L at this point.
Yeah.
I think we have another question, but we'll have, I'll put the contact information for our presenters back up if you want to email them or email me or Christina, but we're at almost the end of the hour, so handing it back over to Christina. You want to just wrap us up?
Yeah, just thank you all very much for joining us. Please consider joining us for our next workshop, which is word accessibility. We also ask that you complete the evaluation if you're interested in a certificate of completion for today's seminar, or if you would like to make sure that you get the resources that Karen shared with us earlier in the presentation, as well as a recording of this presentation. All of this information will also be posted up onto the Accessibility Initiative webpage for you to refer back to as well. And I think if there's any last questions, maybe we'll hang out for a couple more minutes. I did see that there was a question about if there was a functionality to slow down the chart reading in Desmos.
Yeah, that's just a JAWS setting, and so you just have to slow down JAWS, which you can do. James says, best webinar I've attended ever. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that.
Our presenters, they are just as wonderful as they sound and seem. So I hope others will share too. On the survey, I think we asked for your rock stars at your college. And please share that with us so we can invite them to present also in this series. Somebody says, I almost want to take a math class from Susan and Mary. Your enthusiasm is infectious. Yeah, there was a lot packed in that hour.
Christina, could you please put the form eval form link in one more time in the chat box for folks? They're asking for it.
I've got it. Oh.
There it goes.
There are 2 options. You can click either one.
Thank you, ladies.
Mandy, it's not being emailed. It's you have it right here, the link. So for the survey.
Karen, you can probably go ahead and stop your recording session.
Oh, good idea.
And I was just going to, again, thank Susan and Mary one more time for a fantastic presentation. Thank you so very much. I think we've all learned quite a bit here.